If someone asked me today, I've never owned a drone before, I only have enough money to buy one, which one should I get? My answer would still be the DJI Neo 2. And honestly, I think that recommendation is even stronger today than it was a few months ago. Because today, the Neo 2 has more competition than ever. We've seen drones like the Lido 1, the Hover Air X1 series, and several other compact AI drones trying to win over beginners. Some of them are genuinely good products, and competition is great because it pushes everyone forward. But even after all these launches, if I had to recommend just one drone that I believe almost nobody regrets buying, it would still be the Neo 2. And in this video, I want to explain why. Not by reading a specification sheet, not by comparing sensor sizes or flight speeds, but by looking at what actually happens after people buy it. Because after spending time reading through owner experiences and talking to people who use these drones every day, I noticed something interesting that I think says much more than any marketing material ever could. One of the biggest mistakes people make when shopping for a drone is comparing products that are actually designed for completely different lifestyles. People ask, should I buy the Neo 2 or a Mini? Should I buy the Neo 2 or the Lido 1? Should I buy the Hover Air instead? Those are reasonable questions, but I think they're missing something important. The Neo 2 isn't trying to be the best camera drone. It isn't trying to beat the Mini series in image quality. It isn't trying to replace larger drones. What it does better than almost anything else is remove every excuse not to fly. And I think that's why so many owners end up loving it months after the purchase. Think about it. Most of us don't stop using drones because the camera isn't good enough. We stop using them because they become inconvenient. You have to carry a larger bag. You have to unfold everything. You have to connect your controller. You have to wait for satellites. Then you ask yourself whether it's worth taking the drone out just to capture a 30-second moment. Most of the time, the answer becomes no. That's why expensive drones often spend more time sitting on a shelf than flying. The Neo 2 changes that completely. It's small enough that you actually carry it. It's quick enough that you actually launch it. And because you actually use it, you naturally end up capturing more memories. That's why I still believe one of the best ways to think about the Neo 2 is not as a drone, but as an action camera that happens to fly. That one shift in mindset completely changes how you evaluate it. I recently came across a discussion where someone simply asked, is the Neo 2 really worth it? I expected the comments to be full of complaints about battery life or compromises, because every product has them. Instead, I found something much more interesting. People weren't saying it had the best camera in the world. They weren't claiming it could replace a Mavic. They were saying things like, it's the drone I actually use. It's the ultimate beginner drone. It's incredibly forgiving. If I could only own one drone in this category, I'd choose this. That pattern kept repeating throughout the discussion. One owner described it perfectly. He said the Neo 2 is basically the jack of all trades. Maybe it isn't the absolute best at one specific thing, but it's excellent for social media, outdoor adventures, running, biking, travel, and casual filming. Another owner said he sold his Mini because the Neo 2 simply fit his lifestyle better. Someone else called it the ultimate drone for people getting into the hobby because it's so forgiving to fly. These aren't reviewers trying to impress you with cinematic footage. These are people who spent their own money and continued using the drone months later. Now, does that mean it's perfect? Absolutely not. In fact, one thing I appreciate about Neo 2 owners is that they're usually very honest about its weaknesses. Almost everyone mentions battery life. 11 or 12 minutes of real-world flying isn't amazing, and I completely agree with that criticism. If you're expecting long cinematic flights like a Mini or an Air Series drone, you'll be disappointed. But here's the interesting part. Almost every long-term owner also says that battery life eventually stops bothering them. Why? Because they simply adapt their workflow. They buy 2 or 3 extra batteries, carry a charging hub, or use a portable power bank. Some owners even mention charging batteries continuously, from high-capacity USB-C power banks while traveling, making the short battery life much less of a problem than they originally expected. And honestly, that's exactly what happened to me as well. Battery life isn't something I ignore. It's still the Neo 2's biggest weakness. But once I changed how I used the drone, it stopped being the reason I left it at home. In fact, if battery life is your biggest concern, I've already made a dedicated video testing an extended aftermarket battery that almost doubles the flight time. I'll leave that linked in the description because I know a lot of people ask about it. The second thing people often worry about is image quality. Here's my opinion. If your only priority is getting the absolute highest quality aerial footage, then yes, there are better drones. But beginners usually care about something completely different. They want a drone that's easy to fly, hard to crash, and fun enough that they'll actually keep using it. That's where the Neo 2 shines. The LiDAR obstacle sensing gives beginners much more confidence than they would normally have. The AI tracking is incredibly useful for solo creators, and features like gesture control and palm takeoff remove so much of the learning curve that flying quickly becomes second nature. One comment really stood out to me. Someone wrote that the Neo 2 feels almost magical, because many features that initially seem like gimmicks become things you rely on every single flight. I think that's exactly right. Palm launch sounds like a novelty until you've used it for a few weeks. Gesture controls sound unnecessary until you're filming yourself alone. AI tracking feels like marketing until you're riding a bike or hiking and realize you don't have another person to operate the camera. Suddenly, all these small conveniences add up into an experience that's much bigger than the individual features themselves. Now let's talk about the new competition, because I know some of you are wondering whether drones like the Lido 1 or the Hover Air X1 have changed my recommendation. The answer is no, but not because those drones are bad. In fact, I think they're pushing the industry in the right direction. They're making flying simpler and encouraging more people to enter the hobby, but the Neo 2 still has something that's difficult to replicate, and that's the ecosystem behind it. With the Neo 2, you don't just buy one drone, you buy into an entire platform. You can fly it with your phone. You can use a traditional controller. You can upgrade to FPV with goggles. You can experiment with motion controllers. You have access to DJI's software ecosystem, accessories, replacement parts, batteries, and years of refinement. That flexibility means the drone grows with you. Today, it might just be a selfie drone. 6 months later, it could become your introduction to FPV. A year later, it might be the backup drone you throw into every backpack because it's simply too convenient to leave behind. Another thing I noticed from owner discussions is that many experienced drone pilots also keep coming back to the Neo 2. These aren't people buying their first aircraft. Some already own mini drones, Avatas, or even larger drones. Yet they still say the Neo 2 gets flown more often because it's so effortless to use. I think that's one of the biggest compliments any drone can receive. It's not replacing expensive drones because it has better specifications. It's replacing them because it gets out of the bag more often. Of course, there are situations where I wouldn't recommend it. If your goal is professional aerial photography, surveying, or long-range cinematic flights, this isn't the right drone. If you regularly fly in strong winds, larger drones still have a clear advantage. If your entire workflow depends on the best possible camera sensor, then spending more money on a Mini or Air series probably makes sense. But that's not who most beginners are. Most beginners simply want something that helps them capture memories without becoming another complicated gadget sitting on a shelf. That's why I think the Neo 2 has aged so well. It doesn't try to impress you with unrealistic promises. Instead, it quietly becomes part of your everyday routine. It makes you want to go outside and fly. It makes you try new shots. It encourages experimentation because it's forgiving enough that you aren't constantly worried about making mistakes. And that's probably the single biggest reason why people rarely regret buying it. If you read enough owner experiences, you'll notice something fascinating. People complain about the battery. They acknowledge the limitations. They admit there are drones with better cameras. Yet when someone asks if it's worth buying, those same people still say yes. That tells me something far more valuable than any benchmark ever could. It tells me they're happy with the purchase months after the excitement of launch day disappeared. So if someone asked me today which beginner drone they should buy, I'd still say the DJI Neo 2 without hesitation. Not because it's perfect, not because it's the most powerful, but because I genuinely believe it's the drone you're least likely to regret buying. The best drone isn't always the one with the biggest sensor or the longest range. Sometimes it's simply the one that makes you want to fly again tomorrow. And after everything that's launched this year, I still think the Neo 2 does that better than almost anything else. If you already own one, let me know in the comments whether you agree or disagree. And if you're looking for ways to get even more flight time out of it, don't forget to check out my extended battery test linked below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.